We've got Stephanie from Maine. Stephanie, hello. How are you? And I hope you're having a great day.
I'm having a fabulous day. How are you?
Better now that you're here.
Okay, good, good. So I'm calling because it strikes me that back in the Stone Age, when I was a small child, well, not too small, but anyway, um, elocution was a subject that was actually taught in public schools. As there was a big emphasis on music and theater and that sort of thing. And I was struck earlier when you mentioned the Etonian training, and it seemed like that was a huge part of public education once upon a time, as to, you know, whether it's society training you for a role in government or training you for a role on the stage, or there seemed to be at one point in time a little bit more awareness that presentation can either help or hurt what you have to say. And I just wondered if you guys would agree with that and have have any perspective on why we don't make such a big deal of it as we once did.
I'm very
please go first.
I'm very interested in going back and finding the point in time in which we stopped including it as much focus in our education. I think that our culture in America sees that there should be this equality where everyone can head as far in the direction they want as they choose. And there's this independence that rather than, the society sets everything up to do things on our own. And part of how we do that was by this elocution and this teaching so that everyone had the same verbal communication skills. And maybe part of how things got so separate, where the divide is so great, is because we don't have the same set of skills anymore. And if we included that again and more people had access to that some of that divide would start to shrink.
I agree. Can't say another. There's so many. I don't know at what point things shifted, but certainly in Hollywood, when the talkies came on, there was a development of what people would call the Mid-Atlantic dialect, which was sort of this. I don't even know if I can do it. Think Cary Grant, who's a Brit, right? But Cary Grant and Clark Gable sounded the same. They all talked like this. Or think Katharine Hepburn. There's another one. That people deliberately were trained to express themselves in a certain way. That goes to not just for accent, but for intonation and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Well, if you want to be understood in the talkies, you have to speak in just the right way for the primitive technology. I don't know if that was any good at all. I apologize. We can delete that later. But yeah, I take your meaning. I don't know when or why we shifted away from these kinds of things. The answer that I would just sort of assume is true is that whatever the truth is, it's dumb. Because when I think about what is taught in our schools and where our curriculum is derived from, it is not a bunch of experts sitting around coming together and making intelligent, thoughtful conclusions. At least here in America, it is so often, as we're seeing kind of being worked out in the news right now, it is so often because of a bunch of angry people holding signs, or because of a bunch of rich politicians, or these things rarely seem to happen for the right reasons. And I guess I'm curious. Then the question becomes: is there value in teaching elocution in schools, and what would that look like in a modern world? Tallulah, what would you I suppose recommend if you had the power to make some changes here?
I would remove Texas history from the curriculum and replace it with music and verbal communication, interpersonal communication skills. I think that I spent a lot of time learning Texas history in every grade, and that there's a space right there if we replace that with communication skills that would have valued me greatly.
I have another point that sort of oh golly, I just lost it. So anyway, as an aside, I will admit to proudly having used the not proudly, but out of necessity, using the ladies' room, even in North Carolina for the past 23 years. So, those guys can pound sand.
Well, good on you. I mean, we appreciate you you helping to create space in that way. And I hate that you going to the bathroom is such a transgressive and radical act. But I do appreciate your willingness to do so.
Well, I just found it humorous when they passed that stuff. I mean, it was completely stupid. Anyway, thank you so much for taking my call. And I had a brilliant insight that I unfortunately was so brilliant it just burned out.
Yeah, shoot us an email, give us a call back. But thanks for being here tonight.
All right, ciao, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Tallulah, before Serafina grabs us another call, I wanted to ask you about something that was raised in the chat, which is just around how elocution classes and these different things have often been really associated with a class divide. And I guess I'm curious what we should make of that now in 2021 as we talk about, access to private coaching and how insurance or things like Medicaid or Medicare do or probably in most cases don't step in here. I mean, what should we be thinking or feeling about the expense and the maybe social divide that we're discussing here?
Well, let me circle back around to a comment I had on something that came up a minute ago, which is about progress. So I think in some ways, progress is inevitable. It's just the rate at which it will happen. But in other ways, things want to stay the same, right? Whatever voice recipe we're using at the moment is the one that we'll continue using. This will be our voice until we do something intentional to change it. Change in society is the same way. If we want something to change, somebody has to do something to change it, because if no one does, then it'll stay the same. I think that we do have a lot of things going on with healthcare in America that access is a pretty big issue. I think there's a tie in the past to a racial divide, that our healthcare system was set up for unequal access. And one of the ways that that's affecting things now with having healthcare go through the workplace and various different things is that there isn't just this idea that healthcare is a right and that everyone should have it. And so you end up with these things like voice training that can make a huge difference in someone's life not being accessible. I know if you are more comfortable talking, then right, like if that's going to give you access to these things just because you're willing to go there, that's step one. But there's a step, right? If you're able to be effective in the workplace, then you can move forward and become a manager and make higher pay. There's so many things that having these voice skills can help you get to, help you sort of live to your full potential, that I really think that everyone needs as much access as possible to the services, whether free or paid for by healthcare or personally, that will help them reach their voice goals to be able to have the life they want to live.
Yeah, so legitimate access to healthcare is once again the solution to the problem here. I mean, it feels like a broken record in a lot of ways, but I think that that's actually a really thoughtful and insightful answer, and hopefully something that we will see movement on, because like you said, it isn't just going to happen until we make changes. I'm still feeling very tired, Sarah.